please grab some food, and we're going to get started here with part 2. Did you guys have a moment of silence to start your meeting? You did? Okay, well, roll then. Okay. Welcome. Brian, am I live? Okay. All right. I'm going to try this for a while. Okay. So, welcome everybody. It's a great turnout. I'm glad to see everyone. I usually start off with a couple of ground rules. So if you've been here before, you know that it's a school night, and so we're committed to not staying too late. I had thought 8:30, but it might be 8:08 would also be acceptable. My plan is to share a few thoughts with you, and then perhaps we can introduce ourselves, or at least those who would like to could just introduce themselves and share any thoughts that you might have. And we'll talk. We'll just talk some more after I'm done. I have about 15 minutes. I'm going to brace yourself. I have about 15 minutes of things to say. As always, the forum is to talk about broad topics. So if you have concerns about whether your child's homework is going to be counted in the grade if it's a day late, that's a good question. I don't know. So that question will take, you can take somewhere else. If you need your, I'm going to out Laura Miyoshi. If you need your bus stop to be 1 block closer, that's not me either. Now, tonight is Game 1 of the World Series, so I'm going to share just a fun fact. I'm going off script to share a fun fact. The last time the Washington team won the World Series was 1924. The person pitching was a guy named Jack Bentley. If you know the Sandy Spring Museum, it's on Bentley Road. Jack grew up on a farm back there. He was an old dude when I was a little kid, and a Quaker, and he's buried at the Meeting House. His wife Helen gave the land that the museum is situated on. It's a great story, except that Jack was pitching for the New York Giants. He was on the wrong team. Game 7, famous game. Somebody hit I forget who it was. Somebody hit a ball that hit a pebble, bounced over the third baseman. Run scored. That was it. That was Jack Bentley on the mound. But he had a big career, and he knew another guy, Sam Rice, who lived in Ashton. Sam Rice was even a better baseball player. He lived here. He's in the Hall of Fame. So I'm going to begin. Next. I'm going to pivot from that and describe a vision for Sandy Spring Friends School. So what kind of school do we want to be? We want to be welcoming, inclusive, equitable, a place where students can be themselves, where they can come and breathe, where they can feel safe and understood, where they know that what they think is important and other people care. The school should also be challenging. We set a high bar, high expectations. A little touch of swagger is okay. Students should find that they can do things that they did not know that they could do, and be allowed to, perhaps even encouraged to stumble, and find their balance on their way to the finish line, and where they begin to see the contours of what it means to live a life of meaning. These are two things that have to be in balance: welcoming, inclusive, equitable, challenging, sometimes hard, sometimes kind of getting kids out of their comfort zone. Now, there are tools that we need in order to be this kind of school, in order to find that kind of balance. First, to be successful, we must have excellent teachers, and we must give them the tools so that they can teach excellently, taking full advantage of mind-brain education and what we know about how to meet each student's need where they are and not where a bell-shaped curve randomly says that they might be. We do this by committing to be a school and a community which values cultural competence, embraces differences, and believes that respect is at the heart of all relationships. This builds trust. I've really begun to appreciate the glue that trust is in this partnership involving families and students and teachers. Trust is the piece that holds everything together. Now, I want to say a few words about the diversity audit that we undertook. First, the diversity audit was commissioned by the board, which is fully committed to the priorities that I described, to the vision that I described. The audit was led by Rodney Glasgow and was completed last May. Since then, the board has spent a day with Rodney doing a deep dive into the report and its recommendations. Our administrative council has been living with the report, and as you know, it's been widely distributed. The diversity audit did not mark the beginning, and by no means does it mark the end of our work. It is potent, and perhaps it marks the end of the beginning. I would like to offer a couple of reflections. This is my reflections. The audit was not easy to read. It spoke truths that were obvious to some and not experienced in the same way by others. It lifted up the voices of those who are often underrepresented or even ignored. For me, it pushed back against a sense of self-satisfaction. For me, it provoked a purging of arrogance and encouraged a feeling of humility. It allowed me to see the school through lenses different than my own. I hope others experience something similar. This is an extraordinarily important perspective for community members to have, a perspective other than their own. So now what? More specifically, how do we proceed with the work that we recognize as vital to our beloved community with both a sense of urgency and a sense of love? We must continue our work together knowing that if we are sincere, authentic, and determined, we will also take risks. Remember how we want our kids to take risks? Make mistakes, just like the kids. And regrettably, occasionally, we will unintentionally offend. When this happens, we have a choice. We can view ourselves as being so committed to this work that it is really no longer possible that we could say something offensive, let alone racist. In this understanding, we have had an operation and the racist bones have been removed. In this telling, just like we do not expect to get a sore throat after our tonsils have been removed, we can no longer say anything racist after the procedure to remove the racist bones that we had up until they were gone. In this case, I have had nothing to do with how I made you feel. How could I? There's another way of looking at this. We can consider a different way of understanding our journey to creating a place we want our children to be part of and to grow up in. I'll call it hygiene. Every day we brush our teeth. Once in the morning, once at night. They're clean. We even visit the dentist twice a year. So how is it possible that anything could go wrong? Oh, wait. Someone just told me that I have a little piece of spinach trapped in my tooth. It's not personal. Later, I'll brush my teeth and I'll recover. It was just this thing that happened. Now, do you want to know about the spinach, or do you want to go to the job interview looking like that? Of course you want to know. And of course you do not get mad at the person who pointed out the spinach. It's not a fatal flaw. It's how we learn. So each of us have the responsibility to listen, and even to speak up when doing so strengthens the bonds that connect us. Now, there's some questions that are raised, I think, from anyone who's read that report. What does power look like in a truly diverse school? How is it distributed? Let's find out. Let's challenge ourselves to be that school. One guidepost that I am certain of is that all of us who hold power must put students first. Another question. Who benefits from cultural competence? This was a softball question. I thought I'd just have one easy one. We absolutely all benefit. What steps are in progress? Actually, there are lots of steps in progress. Board training, administrative council training, maximum participation in multi-day workshops, including People of Color Conference and White People's Conference, or White Privilege Conference. Sorry. See? Yeah, do little speeches. Anti-bias training for teachers and staff who are going to be on search committees. We have 3 days of anti-bias training coming up in a week or so. A reimagined Intersect, formerly known as Parents of Students of Color. An energized all-school diversity committee. The list goes on. So what are we committed to? We're committed to the action steps that come forth from the recommendations of the diversity audit. I forgot to write one thing down. Including, I'll just say, including making it a priority that we hire a diversity practitioner to be our director of diversity at St. Louis, a new position. What other steps are under consideration? What other steps should be under consideration? That's why we called this meeting. Not to give answers entirely, but to challenge you. Tell us. Now, I want to say a word about my successor, my future successor. And I wanted to tell him a word, too. I wanted to write him a word, so I did write him a letter. I don't know if you saw it. I actually posted it as a blog. Blank. Okay, good. So I'm going to read it. It starts like this. Dear Rodney, when I was named head of school in 2010, Ken Smith, my predecessor, told me, not for the first time, that it was the best job in the world. He was right. Imagine working someplace where everyone agrees that respect is the coin of the realm and that kindness and generosity of spirit matter, where continuing revelation is routine, where our professional lives feel like a journey complete with surprises, discovery, personal growth, mentoring, and a sense of calling that, when spoken about, the sense of calling elicits knowing nods. Imagine arriving somewhere and you find the expectation that you will be your best self, fully and wholly authentic, to be part of the job description, and that fulfilling this need is both easy for you and reciprocated by others. Imagine being part of a profession that is continually reinvigorating itself with an increased understanding of how to teach, learn, and meet every student where they are so that they can be successful based on scientific data and new insights as to how the brain works, paired with 325 years of Quaker wisdom applied to Friend Schools in general and 60 years of Sandy Spring Friend School going at it. Imagine a job where you're surrounded by incredibly smart people and the norms are to collaborate in the search for the greater good, come to meetings on time, listen actively, weigh points of view initially not your own, start meetings with a moment of silence, see the light in others, and poke fun at yourself. Imagine being incredibly proud of where you work, knowing that this is where lives are transformed, great natural talents are discovered, challenges met, differences celebrated. Imagine a school where students speak truth to power, where question, reflection, action is woven into our DNA, and where hope is an essential ingredient, and the creation and recognition of beauty is central to the experience. Imagine a community where defensiveness is abhorred, mistakes owned, risks taken, someplace where you are not expected to be perfect, and the default setting is to assume the best in each other. Imagine a school built around the student experience where teachers are mentors and families are in partnership. Imagine loving a place and the ideals that the place represents so much that when you step aside and the new person who takes the best job in the world is the best person for that job, you couldn't be happier. Imagine that. Tom. So that's what I had prepared. I know we don't reach our ideals. I know that. But it's okay to tell me. It honestly is okay to tell me. But it's okay to have ideals, and it's okay to talk about them and have vocabulary around them and be able to understand when we might be heading in the right direction and what trajectory we're on. And so I share that not so much because that's exactly who we are, but that's exactly who we can be. Remember that notion? There's truth to power, there's hope, there's action, and there's creating beauty. That's the prophetic tradition. It's not 325 years old, it's 5,000 years old. But that's at the heart of what we're doing as well. So let's have a conversation. I haven't introduced anybody, especially I think I should mention Jonathan Oglesby is here, head of our upper school. You've met Mary Lawson. David Blake, head of our middle school. David Hickson, assistant head of school. Laura Miyoshi, chief operating officer. Brian Wilkinson, the information technology. Our Lisa Long. Is that why everyone's pointing? Lisa Long, you're the first. Hold on. Lisa Long. Who else is here? Lauren Mossman, was she here? Did she come by?
She's coming in.
Okay. Oh, yeah, she's in another committee meeting. Oh, Adrian? Okay. Oh, Dimitri? Yeah. I don't know if everyone's ever met. Dimitri started this year. He's the director of technology for us. Okay. Thoughts? I didn't really have a good transition for this. How should we do it? Adrian, how should we next?
Go for it.
Okay, we'll go for it. We could introduce ourselves. That often is a good thing to do. There are a lot of us here.
That'll take the whole half hour.
Yeah, we have till 8:08. We have a half hour, though. Yeah.
But then there'll be no
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah. Okay, let's just have questions. Shall we? Questions? Okay.
And then you can introduce yourself when you have a question.
Yes, even better.
Oh,
Even better. Yeah. Do we need a mic?
Yes.
We'll just. Okay, speak. Hello.
I'm Silvio Weisner. I have our second year here at Sandy Spring. We have a second grader and a first grader. I was curious, for those in the room who may not know as much about your successor, Rodney Glasgow, the gentleman who conducted the diversity audit will be the new head of school. Is that correct?
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about him and what he brings?
He's. We have a lot of disclosure on the website. It's at the bottom. There's a link to the search page and his bio. He went to Gilman in Baltimore. Baltimore is the kind of city where you went to high school is more important than where you go to college. So if he went to Gilman, he's a Gilman guy. He went to Harvard. He has a master's degree from somewhere. Columbia, and I think something from George Washington. I am not the right. He's currently head of the middle school at St. Andrews. He's also the director of diversity at St. Andrews, and he is truly a nationally recognized practitioner on diversity issues, and is a keynote speaker around the country. I will just say he's a special guy. I know him reasonably well. I've spent quite a bit of time with him. He's lovely. Kids love him. He has a knack with kids of all ages. Lauren.
I think just I've attended the People of Color Conference for several years now, and he has, with two other individuals, led the student part of that conference. And you know, one of the things when he gets up on stage, the kids are just like, they're like enraptured, and he just really captures them, you know, but he also meets them on their level. And that's been kind of my exposure to him, as well as he has developed a group for, it started out as administrators in independent schools in the metro area, and they've opened it up to just, if you are a person of color and you work in an independent school, kind of like a place to come together to talk about things that are important to you, not only just in your work, but also, you know, a place to come together and chat and be with, you know, your friends and things like that. So I think he's going to, you know, kind of just come into here and kind of slide right in behind Tom. And again, I've worked with him on a couple of things, but dynamic, but also really, really down to earth. Like I said, you watch him with the students, and he just really engages with them, and I think that's important.
Mm-hmm. And he, I don't know, dare I say, the first family selected St. Andrews and the St. Andrews Middle School, where he's the head, to be, you know, where they send their youngest boy. And so he's, you know, he's familiar with demanding parents, and and he's also incredibly I mean, he will keep a secret. I mean, he really has treated that with complete confidentiality. I'm sort of making a joke about it, but he's really honored the promise to, you know, to be utterly professional in every regard. So, yeah, I couldn't be, as I wrote to him, I really couldn't be happier.
Can you speak at all about his relationship to Quakerism, Quaker education?
You know, I mean, I know he's been asked that question, and I know that I've heard him respond. I'm a little reluctant to kind of speak for him. He's incredibly looking for. He loves this place. He spent quite a bit of time here. He really wants to be. He really wants to lead this school. He really wants to. He wants to be in a Quaker setting and be part of this school. Lisa, or did you want to add to that?
So I know Rodney professionally and personally. He's a fantastic person. And that was actually a question that was asked of him during his interview time, and I actually thought that it was a really good analogy he made to the fact that at St. Andrews, which is an Episcopalian school, and I actually worked there previously with him, he's not in fact Episcopalian, but yet became so entrenched in the understandings of that sect of religion, and really kind of took on that role of being someone who was looked upon when the chaplain was not there. That he actually has become kind of the religious person that is gone to when their chaplain is not actually at or able to run the chapels that they have weekly. And so his response was very much in the same way that he came to embrace and really take on kind of the understandings and the ethos of that. That is exactly what he's looking to be able to do in terms of critical education. And so, that's just the spirit with which, he comes to, I think, everything that he really gets himself involved with. I do just want to say from Laura's perspective, the work that he does, not only with students, but the work that he does particularly with administrators and teachers of color is significant. I've been a part of his group for the last couple of years, and actually just attended a conference in Atlanta where that is very much kind of the almost the southern portion of that, so that people who are in independent schools in the South are having a connection in that way, which I found very, very interesting to have engaged in that. That was actually last week. I spent time there. So just the reach that he has, and I think the way in which he looks at bringing all of that professionalism to what he does is incredible. And we're lucky to have him. I'm going to miss you very much, Tom.
How much? So I would, a quality among folks who lead friend schools, I think an indispensable quality is to be a good listener, and to not have to be the only one talking. He's a really good listener. Not just, he's observer. He's a really good observer, and he listens. So yeah, I think the school is in a really good place, and when a school is in a really, when a school is in a really good place, you need a lot of high octane fuel to kind of get through the next layer of atmosphere and just, and get on. And this guy's, I think we're getting a lot of high octane rocket fuel to help us imagine what we can be.
I just was listening and I wanted to commend Sandspring High School for taking this initiative. This is a great step because the reflection of the United States of America, for all of us who are foreigners and have become naturalized citizens in this country, this is a reflection of tomorrow's children. So you are way ahead, in my opinion, of the horizon. You just expanded your visionary power of the quicker truthfulness and honesty by embracing such. And so I'm so proud to be a part of, a parent of this great institution. I look forward to the growth. I hope my grand and great-grand can come here and just keep it flowing forever. It is such a great move that was made, and I congratulate the school for such a great vision. Thank you. That's all I want to say.
I need to change my letter to Rodney and include the graciousness of the parents here. I don't think I made that point strong enough. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I have a slightly less gracious question. I have a question about putting cameras in the bistro and where that fits within the spices and how we create a sense of accountability and community and responsibility in our students that goes beyond surveillance culture. I work a lot on prison abolition and the sort of school to prison pipeline in DC, and how we treat these kids is so spectacular in their sense of shared obligation or responsibility to each other. And I can just think off the top of my head of so many other ways we could engage them in their ownership of the community that fit within the spices. And so I just sort of want to unpack that decision and how it fits within the vision of community that we're building with them.
Did everyone hear that? So Byrne is the general counsel for the Center for Health and Gender Equity. Did I get that right? Yeah. And a campus resident and a mom and a spouse of a teacher. So what does she know about any of this?
Our school knows because it was announced in all schools meeting.
Did we?
Yes, it's not a secret. Upper school students have been asking me. So
Yeah. Okay, so a couple of years ago, we did a safety and security audit. Everyone's conscious of what that feels like. You know, we're sending our kids to a school. It's open. You have to have a leash for your dog. You can't smoke cigarette. You've read that sign? You know, that's kind of, you know, like everyone welcome in different languages. You know, so it's an open campus. And so we had a guy from Kansas City or someplace. We had some nationally recognized guy come and stay with us. I mean, he came one day and spent the night and walked around and spent the next day. And I was really nervous about it, by the way, because when somebody when a nationally recognized person tells you these are the things you should do, you better do them. Otherwise, if something bad happens and you ignored somebody's advice, you know, that you don't want to do that. So he told us a lot of things that we could do, and most of them were like really sensible. Cutting back bushes so that you could have better visibility. There were a lot of things around the dorm. We made a lot of changes around the dorm with key fobs and better lighting. We still have more lighting to do around campus. Survey after survey tells us we need to do more lighting. And part of our lighting strategy is to do things with the new upper school when we do landscaping and things like that. And there were issues around we had for some number of years we've had things swiped out of the athletic center, and sometimes it's like visiting team stuff, sometimes it's our team stuff. It's really been the other thing that's happening at the athletic center is that somehow it ended up that we had, it seemed like hundreds of keys circulating in the community. And so people were playing basketball at 2 in the morning, and they were alums, you know, but they weren't, you know, we didn't know that they were there. They were just coming. And so there was a lot of like like we're responsible. And so we've been giving a lot of thought. We've been sitting with this idea of what role do cameras have? Should we have take pictures of license plates? You know, when people come in, we had people coming in at 2 in the morning and park. I don't mean to scare anybody, and nothing scary has happened. But we have people who, we've had cars that come in and park in our parking lot for a few hours in the middle of the night. Maybe the Nationals are playing in LA and it's a late game or something. But so we don't want to flinch. We want to find the right balance. We invited, we now have sort of some commitment to having somebody living on campus whose responsibility it is to make sure doors are locked, to make sure that to do a few runs around campus, to stay up late. Their hours are different now because they're staying up late. We rent the pack to groups, dance recitals, and Good Counsel was using it, and we have the interfaith folks are coming the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, and so we're trying to find the right balance between creating an environment that we believe is as safe as possible for students in our open campus, where people live here, you know, adults and children, and at the same time hold up personal responsibility and have a, you know, and set the bar high for what we expect. But the problem is that it's not just us. Jonathan, were you going to say something?
I want to just jump in. So I was not actually meeting for business today in the upper. Did you say all school?
Oh no, it wasn't this week.
Okay, so
The students were asking last week.
okay, so I'm, and there could be some confusion on here.
Yeah.
I was a part of a conversation today with Ben, that was our Dean of Students in the upper school, who's also on the Safety and Security Committee, in conversation with David Hickson and with Laura Miyoshi. There has been no decision to put cameras in the bistro yet. We are talking about it, but there's been no decision made, and the very issues you raise are the very issues that we are discussing.
Yeah.
So I want to be clear that so it's been communicated that has already decision been made. Unless I'm looking at Laura, like that decision has not yet been made, or has it?
We have not identified every location. There has been a discussion about the bistro, but we have not moved forward with any implementation. And really the conversation, as Jonathan was saying, was that the upper school administration is really trying to work with the students to talk about what's going on, why is it going on, what's right, what's wrong, and and not use the term that we use for the use of cameras on campus, and we will use going forward. They're for forensic purposes. They're not for we're not having a system that you can monitor real time. One is we don't have staffing for that. We don't have like a security staff. But there have been things where incidents have occurred, and so there's a couple things. It's not meant to be punitive. It's meant to be, in some instances, hopefully a deterrent. But in other instances, it really is, in the event that there is an incident of some sort, that there can be a record. And that is based on not only the consultant, but actually the Board of Trustees is also working on safety and security measures at a much higher level, obviously, but of how they feel the school should be better secured.
I'll just say my biggest concern is the athletic center, because we just had people there all the time, day and night, and I that we keep changing the locks, and when we, correct me if I misstate this, Laura, when we're with the new upper school, we'll have a fob instead of metal keys.
Called access control, yes.
Or
it'll be electronic locks.
It'll be electronic locks, and it'll allow us to then use electronic. I mean, when we get a vendor for that, we'll have them also quote the PAC, the middle school.
The whole campus right now.
Yeah. So that'll.
Is there parents who may be interested in giving more input to this? Is there somebody that folks could go to?
I'm pretending I didn't hear Jen. Yeah, I mean, Jen has asked, is there a way for parents to have input? And my sense from this group is that there are parents who would like to have input. So we'll find a way to have a discussion before, to involve more voices. I will say this. Sorry, Joanna. Can you hold to keep yourself? There's going to be a wide spectrum of feelings about this. If your kid is living in the dorm, you're going to have a feeling that might, and you're 10,000 miles away from them.
What I
was going to add, I'm Joanna Scott, was that I think, just to bring it back to the diversity audit, just to raise the point that this is something we're going to experience very differently, depending on what your kid looks like, to be quite honest. And so I think maybe if we can, there's a different forum to have that conversation. We may have some thoughts across our differences around that. So I just wanted to flag that this is one of those things from that report that we are going to experience very differently and have very different feelings about based on our cultural lens and our racial lens.
Right.
And
experiences.
Right.
I'm Joshua Morgenstern again. When the safety and security audit was done, were students in any way involved in or asked for feedback or input into the process as far as what concerns they had?
I've actually met with Torch a number of times as we've gone through the discussion of new, I guess, processes and things that would be implemented. And actually, you know, as Tom was saying, you know, the students, just as much as the parents, had different views. There were students who said, you know, actually, you know, to quote, well, thank God it's about time. And there were other students who said, whoa, wait a minute, what's going on? And so we've had several conversations. The conversation about implementing cameras has been going on for 7 years here. So faculty have come and gone, students have come and gone, parents have come and gone, and yet we've not made that move because of wanting to be cautious and wanting to be able to do it in the right way.
So this summer, I visited Friend's school, and I got lost because the campus is so huge. And guess what? I ended up in the camera room, and there were monitor screens, and I could see myself on one of the screens. And this is 21st century. Things will happen. We need to be realistic and practical. It's time for cameras. It's time for cameras everywhere. And it's time for us to have like some monitor screens in the second room like I saw. There was a room and it was on cameras, and it had just like 2 people in like uniform, like security, I guess they wear. And they sat there, and I guess they rotated, observing the screens to have an idea of what was going around the campus. This is not only for monitoring whatever is occurring, it's also for safety, it's also for liability. This material, everything has to be considered now. We are in a new dimension, there are different things, different backgrounds, and nobody wants to say, oh, because of this person, like you said, with the diversity, there's no such thing anymore. Everybody does everything. So it's time for us to have cameras and just observe it, in my opinion. That's all I can say. That's okay.
I'm a dove on this issue, you know. So we're just trying to kind of recalibrate a little bit, and I think, you know, the energy into this is to do as I don't want to say as little as possible, but we want to be, you know, respectful, but you know, go to any of the independent schools in DC or Philadelphia, Central Philadelphia, and see what that's like. I mean, we don't want to be that.
I believe you made reference earlier to the parents of students of color group. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's happening with that?
Well, hi.
Could you stand?
Sure. One of the things that we were discussing actually earlier, the Parents of Students of Color was a series that we started last year with myself and many other community members, families, faculty, and staff. And this year, based upon the diversity, well, actually not based upon the diversity audit. Actually, we have decided that we would like to move forward with expanding, not necessarily being solely for parents of students of color, but we have created Intersect, which will be the diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative that we would like to start here at Sandy Spring. We have two wonderful facilitators that
Are they back here by some chance?
that will be working with us together on that. Joanna Scott and Jen Ray.
Hi.
Thank you. But last year, Lauren Mossman, Lisa Long, and myself worked together to try to do something where we are focused specifically on students here at Sandy Spring Friends School. And that is the goal. And with the support of the board and the Diversity Committee on Spiritual Life, there you go, DCSL, with the board, we were able to present these events to the community. You will be seeing more about it and hearing more about it after this evening, and it's something that we want to continue and then hopefully be a part of what we will be moving forward. And if Joanna or Jim would like to say a few things, by all means.
Whatever you would do. Really well. We just go, no, you go. No, you go. So, it's so cute.
Your guys are matching. We're having
okay. So I have I think why we're sort of struggling here is we're still formulating this, and in large part, it will be formulated with parents. So what we're starting with is a concept of Intersect, which is a fabulous name. And essentially, if you look at the diversity audit, there are a number of recommendations that address a number of concerns that really are about students' experiences and parents' roles within the community to help address them, as well as our different experiences based on who we are and the range of our diversity. And so that's what this is really focused on, is your fabulous tagline.
What we want to do is connect students across their differences. So Intersect is a bigger space, a more inclusive space. That's by design. And then we also want to think through opportunities where we can also break into our various affinity groups. That was one of the areas lifted up in the diversity audit that parents really want, because our experiences here are very different as they're connected to our identity, our family makeup, and things like that. So that's our vision for it, is to have a broader space, but then also make space for parent-led affinity group spaces to talk about those different experiences that we're having here.
So the first event we're looking at in November, and stay tuned for the exact date, we will be having a more deeper dive into what were the findings in the diversity audit, what do they mean, what are our reflections on those things, and how do we want to see Intersect move forward. So that's just some of what we're starting to look at as a plan, and then also talking to several parents to assist with those various affinity groups.
And one other piece, my background is in diversity, equity, inclusion. Jen's background is in anti-racism work, and so we want to use those skills to really facilitate a space. So it's not that we're leading it, we're facilitating space. So we're also looking for parent volunteers. If you're interested in hosting an affinity group, we need that, and we invite you to reach out, and we'll certainly have plenty of things for you to do. It's not a huge time commitment. But just making space for conversation.
And probably no baking, but you know.
And one last thing before we sit down, and that is a lot of times when we're talking about race, the focus tends to go to people of color, but there's an important part of intersect that's also for white parents, and so there's an important piece for that too.
And as Intersect describes, and so I don't mean to be the last word, but there could be, we're also looking at LGBTQ families, adoptive families. That will all come into play, and is also very important that we as parents are there together sharing our own experiences. So I think it can be a really, it'll be a new concept, I think, from a parent community standpoint, allowing some kind of courageous conversations, I guess, and all in the effort of really helping our school and our children have the best experience and really achieve what is laid out by Tom described in his vision.
Yeah, no, that's it. Thanks.
Try to make it fun too.
I'm really excited about what we can do. Yeah.
Can I ask another follow-up?
Right behind you.
Okay.
We are new this year, and I'm just kind of interested. So, in being at other schools that have had diversity audits, do we know this is where we are as a school, or is this very surprising to the parent community, and how much work is there to be done in terms of kind of teeing up the community behind the recommendations in the audit? Does that make sense? Yeah.
Did everyone hear that?
No.
So, how surprising were the results of the audit to people? And how much work should we anticipate to kind of help prepare people for the work to be done? Is that, yeah. And, I can only speak to, I think that the audit survey was largely very, very positive. And if you look at, if this were if we had Robert's Rules of Order, if that's how we decided things, and we voted, most people would vote that our diversity was in great shape. What the audit also revealed was the point that Joanna made, that many people experience the school in a way that is not consistent with the dominant way that the school has been experienced. And that those voices were held up in a way that was, for me, loud and clear. And for that, I'm super grateful that we did the audit and that those voices, could be heard. And now we got to do something about it. That for us to move along, we need to be a school that not that everyone's experience will be the same, but that we recognize that people's experiences are different, and that we meet them where their experience from the school can be. Have you been there the whole time, Tony?
Hi, Tom. How are you?
Their experience of the school they can feel the embrace of equity and ownership that we will all feel when we're doing it right. So are we prepared? Probably not. But that's kind of, as the Quakers don't say, you saddle up and ride to the sound of the gunfire. We're not going to flint. We're done with that. Flinching is so 2000. This is 2019, 2020. We're just going to ride.
And And way will open, I think. Is
And
what
way
you
will
said.
That's probably better.
The way will open. Instead of riding to the side of the gunfire.
I just wanted to offer a way of thinking about this. My name is Steve Moles, graduate in 1981. I was on the board in 89, and I was co-clerk of the diversity committee in 89. When we did training for the board, we didn't do a full-blown diversity audit, anything like what you all just did. But the perspective I want to offer is that there certainly are surprising things, I would imagine, in the audit. And that a good community should continue to inspect itself and renew itself. Community is not something that you do once and you're done with. Community is continuing to renew, and inclusion is the exact same thing. Inclusion is not something that we did in 1999 that we trained the board and we're done with it. That's not what it is. And the two are linked very, very closely. So, so it's right that we should continue to strive. It's right that we should continue to live our ideals. And what makes it work or not is whether or not each of us steps into community and steps into inclusion and does our part to carry the torch for the next time that we're here, whether you're faculty, parent, student, whoever. And I hope that 10 years from now, or 5 years from now, or whatever, there's another meeting where we're wrestling with whatever the next horizon is. That's right. That's how it should be. So I just, want to put that perspective on this, that on the one hand, it's not that anything is in some ways surprising or terribly wrong. In some ways, I mean, yes, there's things that need to be fixed, but, step in. That's in some ways, that's what the school is about, right? So, let's roll up our sleeves and give each other a hug and get down to it. Thank you, Steve. Oh, and I'll help out with that thing.
You would have been a couple committees.
Continuing on the diversity audit theme, you'd mentioned that the school is planning to hire a dedicated staff person to be I'm not sure what the title is, the diversity coordinator or diversity inclusion. Could you tell us a little bit more about that plan as it is formed?
Well, I mean, in the simplest outline, we have, as an administrative council, as leaders in the school, we have sort of submerged our individual, what we would like to have staffing-wise, to agree that the next position to be built into the budget will be for a senior individual. So this will happen before I leave, but I'm going to ask Rodney to be on the committee, and it'll be somebody that, we haven't, there's a lot of different ways of doing this. Rodney is the diversity director at St. Andrews. He's also the head of the middle school. In most schools, I'd say, even the vast majority of schools, it's not organized that way. The director of diversity is a full-time job. They're not doing anything else. And I'm anxious and interested in getting more input from Rodney. I'm not anxious, but I'm interested.
I'm a parent of the lower school, 2 kids. I'm wondering if you have any comments or thoughts on faculty attrition.
We had more teachers depart last year than we normally do, and we've looked hard at that and tried to see whether there are patterns or, are people responding to something? Are we, is our salary so cruddy that, people are forced to work somewhere else, or, any number of things like that. Sort of, is there a secular trend associated with this? And we've kind of, David, you looked at this a little bit. We've kind of, do you want to make a comment?
Yeah, our attrition on a numerical basis was a little higher than normal last year, but it kind of falls within the standard deviation, that varies from year to year. Having said that, every year has its particular challenges and issues. People leave for personal reasons. The families are relocating. People are pursuing other opportunities. Sometimes it's the school's decision. And I think all of those different factors were at work this past year. So, I think what Tom said is there some overall pattern that's driving the number? No. You'd have to look at each individual situation and if there's, I forget the exact number, but if there were 15 staff members who left for one reason or another, there were 15 different reasons. So we would prefer the number not be that high in a typical year, but this is my 35th year in independent school education, and then been my experience at the 5 schools I've been at that it just varies from year to year. Some years you have a lot, and some years there's almost none, and so I'm not worried about a 1 year pattern.
Tom, I remember in the wonderful presentation you gave in the PAC a couple of years ago about what the new building would be, with all those great diagrams. One of the aspects of the new building that you were justifiably very proud of was how there's a massive open workspace, design space to allow for project creation and implementation in the STEM areas. And I'm wondering whether in conjunction with completion of the building, the school has given thought to adding 1 or 2 faculty members in the STEM area, engineering, physics, or whatever other areas could make good use, media arts, of that new space and that new infrastructure, so that you can actually have additional classes in those areas, because there seems to be a demand for that, and the building has been made with that in mind, that growth into that space. So I'm wondering if you've given serious thought to staffing it up, to filling that space with teachers.
So I missed the first part of what you said, because when you accuse me of pride, and Quakers, you can. I'd rather be a thief than guilty of excessive pride. Okay, yeah. I made the necessary adjustment so I could hear the rest of the point. We will grow the upper school a little bit. We're probably 90% of the size we want to be. We're at 332 or something like that, and maybe we'll be at 350, 360. That's kind of, the building. We built the building a little big. I think the county came and looked at the building and said, "Oh, you're certified for, what was it, 500 or something?" I mean, it was.
The number of seats, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the number of people that we could have occupancy, number of students was like twice as many as what we're planning. But then they're used to having 30 kids in a class, and we have 15. So, Jonathan, do you want to comment about kind of where you see curriculum and sort of STEM going, particularly as we get a little bit bigger and move into the new space?
Sure. It's interesting too, the question about faculty attrition. It's an interesting, staffing always presents an opportunity. I mean, sometimes we have departures that allow us to look at other opportunities. The science department the science department has been heavily involved in the design of especially the science classrooms in the upper school. Sitting through a meeting earlier this week with Laura and David and Sherry Rivera, who's our science department chair, and the height of file cabinet drawers and what can be stimming, it's the details kind of ridiculous. But part of the opportunity that presented itself to us was in being able to hire Sherry this last year, and kind of so not only taking what the science department was already envisioning for that space, but in hiring somebody who brings a really, Sherry is somebody who can step in and teach literally every class that we offer. That kind of breadth and depth of experience. And so working with her along with that department in how do we envision kind of what do we do next? You already heard Tom talk about a commitment to a diversity, equity, and inclusion director. And so when we look at staffing, we don't have unlimited resources. And so as we start to allocate additional faculty in certain roles, it's high on the list, but so is everything else, right? So, and that may not be fully answering your question, but I mean, it is complex enough.
So it's not likely to be in the next year and a half, but it's on the radar.
I think
it's absolutely. It's been on the radar and it continues to be on the radar. I think, you know, again, I come back to some financial constraints of expanding staff or expanding faculty as we go along. And
right.
So
you need to have enough students to justify it.
And there's a point that, and David, Jonathan, you can speak to this. David, you can speak to this. That you know, kids have to have certain requirements. And so the courses that we offer, like we're offering psychology this year, AP psychology, and it turned out to be super popular. We have
2 sections.
So you know, how we select electives and you know, staff them. You know, it's pretty. Because kids have so many requirements. There's only so much that they can you know, take on outside of the core. It's a very rich program, I would say. And you know, the only thing I would add, and we could have another, you know, forum on this, is that I think that over the next number of years, by the time we're driving driverless cars, by the time you're hitting a button and a car pulls up and you get in and it takes you somewhere and it's just you and you're in the back seat, by the time that happens, we will be teaching courses that we're not teaching today, that will be more interdisciplinary, that will be, you know, kind of create a greater understanding of problem solving and collaborative work toward meaningful issues. And you know, if I wish we could just, I don't wish this exactly, but if we could start over with our curriculum and not worry what colleges think about it and not worry about, you know, what the county thinks or the state, you know, we would do it one way. We'll get there. You know, it just it's a path and we have to figure it out. There's some exciting stuff that's going to happen, David.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to what's been said is, you know, just a little bit of a historical perspective. In the time I've been here, just in the last 10 years, there are many courses in the upper school and in the middle and lower school, too, in terms of curriculum that we didn't have 10 years ago. The 2 design engineering classes, AP Physics, there's a digital design class in the middle school that wasn't there.
Brian's course.
Yeah, and AP Computer Science. So these are courses that have been added over the last few years, and I think it's the path we're on.
I can't believe I kind of didn't say this earlier. And I don't know if any of you have seen the pod that's sitting out beside the pack, like the storage pod. So in that, Laura's laughing. Laura, we've given part of Laura's gray hairs because of this class. So Sharon Wall's fabrication and design class. So we actually have students welding, and which is just hilarious and fabulous. And so we're actually welding outside. It helped us solve the ventilation issue. It did, right? You know, and so I mean, I think there's some creativity that we have been able to do in that. And in talking to Sharon, I think what they're working on right now, students are trying to solve a seating problem.
My daughter's in the class.
Okay, good. Yeah. I haven't seen her out welding yet.
No, she's in the class.
Okay.
2 of her teammates were doing the welding when she was doing the design for the cushions.
Okay.
Who did?
And that was a class we didn't have before. Okay. That was something Sharon's been.
I'm not sure you had Sharon before. Yeah. She seems to teach most of the classes that
yeah,
David just.
It was an additional position. Yeah. I mean, the department was smaller.
So I sense that the season ticket holders here. It's been since 1924, people. That I love spending time like this. We'll do it again later in the year, I think in January. I'm going to see everybody in so many different functions and so many exciting things that we're doing. I end the meetings like this in the same way, always to say, my door's always open. How can I know what's going on in the school if people don't come and share their experience? So somebody called me the other day. It's not that important. It's only good stuff. It's like, we can make time. But I need to hear from people, it's my favorite part of the job. So come see me. I know Jonathan, David, Lisa. Everybody feels the same way. We want to be in partnership. We want to be in constant conversation with you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.